And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. That's right, it is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, have a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you are listening somewhere else and you would like to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. As we get ready to jump off here, I do naturally read through as many of the comments as is plausible. For those of you who are listening and unable to see what's going on, and I'll say hello to some of the people that have chimed in so far. I see Helter has joined us today, as well as Dragon. Brian is here. Kimberly, Cyberjack Sr., Lucky is here. Glad you all could make it. Being joined today by one feline. One feline in the room, and it is Granny Smith again. Granny Smith, laying on the floor, keeping me company as we go on. I see Spectre has joined us, as well as Jane Spitfire, and Sven, and Fluke Man, as people are starting to jump on and say hello. And hello to everyone else who chooses not to speak, because I know there are people that just listen, and that's okay. That's okay. You don't have to answer the roll call. Magic Mirror can still see you. Magic Mirror can still see you. Now somebody's going to get paranoid. Speaking of paranoid, this came up yesterday because it was happening as we were talking practically, but I'll go ahead and run it over really quickly because there's some interesting points here. And that is, of course, everyone's favorite host, Alex Jones. Alex Jones, if I can even say that on ScrewTube without getting roasted. Getting absolutely roasted. You don't even know what you can and cannot say in here anymore, trust me. New York Post article, InfoWars sale to The Onion could be held up in court. As Alex Jones rants, his site has been hijacked. Well, it has, hasn't it? The sale of InfoWars, Alex Jones's right-wing conspiracy site, to The Onion could be held up in court after a judge questioned the transparency of the auction process on Thursday. That's interesting. And I'll tell you why in a moment if it doesn't come up in the article. The satirical news site placed the winning bid for the site at a bankruptcy auction in an offer backed by families of the Sandy Hook situation, shall we say, who are owed more than $1 billion from Jones in defamation judgments, which is a kangaroo court anyways. He didn't even get a jury of his peers, which you can opt out of a jury of your peers and ask for a judge to preside in a criminal case. But my understanding is that Jones didn't take that option. So that hearing never should have taken place. That court case never should have gone down in the first place. And 1.5 billion, actually, 1.5 billion in judgments, that makes no sense. He was set up. But back to the article. The judge in Jones's bankruptcy case said he had misgivings about how the auction was held at an emergency hearing in Houston later in the day and ordered an evidentiary hearing to sort out whether the auction was fair. It says we're all going to an evidentiary hearing, and I'm going to figure out exactly what happened, according to Judge Christopher Lopez. No one should feel comfortable with the results of this auction. The only bidder, or the only other bidder, First United American Companies, shop Alex Jones, complained the bidding method was switched from an open process to silent auction in which rival bids weren't disclosed to other potential buyers at the last minute. So he basically tried to buy it from himself. The Onion's parent company, Global Tetrahedron, has not disclosed what its winning offer was, but the trustee who ran the auction said the dollar figure it offered was less than First United America's $3.5 million bid. So they bid less than First United and won in an open auction that suddenly became closed, yeah, that definitely needs to be investigated because there's something very fishy going on there. Absolutely. And then it didn't slow him down at all because he jumped right to another platform almost immediately. I think that day he was on X and had like 1.2 million views. Thomas has joined us as well as League. Kimberly says he was set up. I think he was on to something. He often is. Here's the thing about Jones. He does sound crazy. He really does sometimes. He sounds like he's lost his mind. And he does say some outrageous things. But if you go back and you really look at the history and the track record of the things that he discusses and exposes, as it were, 9 times out of 10, he turns out to be correct. As we were just finding out about the fluoride, you remember last week we read the article about the fluoride, that now the government has to admit that, yes, indeed, fluoride in the tap water is interfering with men's fertility rates. But Alex Jones brought that up a long time ago. And everybody said, oh, he's crazy. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. Sven says the custodian lied to the judge, a small felony. And there's Semper Fi. And Flukeman says, notice the thumbnail people chuck the Harris merchandise away. How weak they are. Thought they were hardcore supporters like Nazis. Plenty of them around right after the war ended. Yeah, I know. They threw. No, I know. At least they stuck in. I'll give them that. They may have been wrong, but they stuck it out. These guys are like, nah, throw that trash away. You like the thumbnail, though, huh? I like that. And Country Living has joined us now. But yeah, I mean, that's been, again, we read that article last week. And that, by the way, is something that RFK Jr. wants to go after, is the fluoride in the water, because for decades, people have been going to town hall meetings and complaining about it, saying they don't like all the chemicals in the water. And in particular, they want the fluoride taken out, and no one ever listens to them. No one ever listens. RFK will listen, because he has a beef with all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was just interesting how that worked out for Jones. That they threw him under the bus with the initial hearings. They threw him under the bus with this auction. It was done basically to mock him, and it sounds like it was set up. It sounds like it was set up. And if I'm waiting to see the results of how that investigation goes, I'm pretty sure that that they screwed him over. They've been screwing him over because they want to scapegoat this guy. But just like with Trump, the more they hit him, the more credibility they lend to him. The more credibility they lend to him. And he quotes here, it says, this was an auction that didn't happen with a bid that was lower with money that wasn't real. The judge said he doesn't have an opinion on who buys InfoWars, but his job was to make sure it was done fairly. I personally don't care who wins the auction, according to Lopez. I care about process and transparency. Well, let's hope that judge is being honest. This is Lopez right here. Because, again, a judge, very political position. Personally, I'm hard pressed to trust any judge. Any judge. I've run into too many shady. As working for juvenile justice, and then my own personal experience in family court. I don't trust them. And then you see stuff like this come up all the time. It makes you nervous. So remains to be seen. Remains to be seen how all that goes. And since we brought it up, we may as well jump to RFK Jr., which is in an LA Times article here. Any second now, restream. Trump chooses anti-jab, shall we say? Because I don't know if I can say that word on ScrewTube. Trump's anti-jab activist Robert Kennedy Jr. as the health secretary. There he is. And, I'm not a huge fan of RFK. I've talked about it before because people have asked me what I thought of him. I feel like he's a born and bred politician. I don't trust it. I don't. But because of the injuries that he received because of his jabs, which is why he speaks the way he does, he was permanently debilitated by a shot. He doesn't trust any of it. He doesn't trust, and one of the things he wants to go after, by the way, like I just mentioned, is the fluoride in the drinking water. I have a hard time believing that they dump all that fluoride in the water all across the country to help our teeth. I mean, you can put your foil hat and get going with that because, the whole thing with fluoride goes all the way back to World War II, and what was going on over there. But he has a huge issue now. He has a huge issue now with jabs, prescription medications, fluoride, and a lot of other things that he thinks is poisoning everybody. He's got a personal vendetta. Let him run wild. That's what I say. I'm glad that he got that appointment, actually. President-elect Trump says he will nominate anti-jab activist Robert Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, putting a man who views public health officials have described as dangerous in charge of a massive agency that oversees drugs, jabs, and food safety, medical research, and the social safety net programs, Medicare and Medicaid. And it goes on to here, Kennedy, I think this is a quote from Kennedy. It says, "For too long, Americans have been crushed by the industrial food complex and drug companies who have engaged in deception, misinformation, and disinformation when it comes to the public health." Which is correct. And actually, I did that wrong. That was actually Trump's quote. I did Kennedy's voice for Trump. Sorry, everybody. Brian thinks all judges are liberals. Lucky says fluoride was to dumb people down and Nazis used it in, we'll just say, World War II. Because I don't know if I can say that on ScrewTube. I really don't anymore. I don't know what I can do. But, and also, when it comes to the FDA, and I agree with this as well, I don't know if anyone realizes this. Look it up. Because I don't have exact numbers. I just remember reading the articles. There are more than 10,000 food additives permitted in the United States. Food coloring, preservatives, artificial sweeteners, artificial salts, all this kind of stuff. More than 10,000. The next country with the highest number only allows just over 300. Someone explain that. Why are we doing this? We don't need it. And you don't need it because they make the same products overseas with less artificial ingredients. Helter says he believes Americans need to know exactly what's in them. Fair enough. Europeans would be shocked to see some of the ingredients in our foods. And there you go. Semper says when Obama was thinking about making RFK Jr. the head of the EPA, the left applauded. Yeah. And Monkey is here. Glad you could make it. Helter said Trump kept his word. Some people thought he was just using RFK for the election and was going to drop him the day after. Yeah, well, again, you want somebody who's going to get the job done. You get someone who has a vendetta against the wrongdoing of that agency. RFK Jr. has a vendetta. Like him or hate him. And like I said, as a straight up politician, I don't trust the guy. But he has a personal problem with that agency. He'll clean it up, or he'll at least try. I'll give him that. Use your anger. What did Emperor Palpatine say? Yes, use your hate. Let it flow through you. There you go. Dragon says food sold in America is banned in many foreign countries. Number of mandatory Jabs is off the chart compared to other countries. I know. We read an article last year. I think the number is well over 100 now. It makes no sense. And I brought my own childhood shot record on the podcast to show people at some point. I don't remember how long ago it was. I've got like less than, I think, 5 things on it. And 2 of them are a booster, you know? The last shot I got was in 1973. Country says grow and raise as much of your own food as you can and home cook as much as possible. And then you end up with ginormous vegetables. Who wants to see a really big carrot? Who wants to see a really big carrot? I'm not kidding. Let's see if anyone responds to that. Monkey says the one thing I'll ever give the EU is knowing what foods we eat here in the US is straight up poison. Exactly. And I think the other country, the country that's just over 300 is the UK. Jane says Cheetos, the snack here in the US, but not in Britain because of the chemicals. And you don't need all those artificial colors to make it orange. That's the thing. In Britain, cause of, pit bull dogs not allowed in Europe either. They can be very independent. And Savage says he's got a vendetta. His voice is AFU because of the crappy shot that he got. Exactly. Brian says body can barely break down food coloring, preservatives, and other garbage they put in the food. Your body has to work harder and go into overdrive to get rid of it. And add to that all the medications that most people are on. And then add to that the fact that most people smoke or drink or use recreational drugs. How hard do you think that your kidneys and your liver are working? And then add to that they're probably drinking tap water or drinking beverages that were mixed with tap water at the factory. Jane says you can eat horse meat in France, but not in the U.S., right? Yeah, you can eat horse meat in the U.S. It depends, because I know I've seen it for sale in different places. Eric says, interesting to see Sly Stallone introducing Trump last night. I wonder what he thinks of Arnold's Kamala endorsement. Yeah, well, we all know what Arnold thinks, okay? Arnold thinks, Mr. Screw Your Freedom. And Semper says, make friends with someone from Germany. The horrible gummy bears are 10 times better and have real fruit. Savage had 6 shots as a child in the Navy, being sent overseas, got dozens back in 95. I know it. And Kimberly wants to see a big carrot. Oh, no. Oh, no. Jane says in California, they saw the Chinese grocery store carrots as big as a human arm. And Country says, as of now, we can still use consensus objection for kids' shots in schools. Lucky doesn't want to see the carrot. It's a real carrot. It's not it's not what you think. And Country grew massive carrots this year. Yeah, we pulled up some big ones. How about that? That's 3 inches wide. That's about 9 inches in circumference. Big, and I will thank my wife's compost. It's short though, because it just is. It's like a little fat carrot because there was only some root sections on the end of that. I had a bigger one, but I broke it by accident. And Jane says a real edible carrot. Yes, it is. You can't just sit there and chomp on it like Bugs Bunny, but yes. You don't see them like that in the supermarket now, do you? Unless, of course, you go to a natural grocer. As we move around here, Biden still trying to ruin everything before Trump gets into office. Tries to ruin everything before he gets into office because that's what spiteful people do. Washington Examiner article. Biden announces $1.2 billion in funding for cleaner construction materials. What the hell does that mean? Cleaner construction materials. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks for that. More money we didn't need to spend. President Joe Biden is actively governing during the last few months of his presidency. The 46th president announced on Thursday over 1.4 billion in funding dedicated to climate change. The spending includes the allotment of 1.2 billion in funding by the Department of Transportation to empower states to use, quote, cleaner construction materials for transportation projects. What the hell does that mean? The funding is part of the Biden administration's investment in clean energy and other climate initiatives that, quote, by the way, do not work. Do not work. We've talked about this over and over again. Stipulated by the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law. Lots of red tape, lots of bureaucracy, lots of money, and the Inflation Reduction Act. Freudian slip there. Inflation Reduction Act, which is a complete oxymoron because they have spent so much tax money on this and borrowed so much money for this. There's no excuse for it. These efforts of President Biden's Investing in America agenda include securing the largest ever investment in climate and clean energy in the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law, and unleashing a clean energy manufacturing and deployment boom that has attracted hundreds of billions of dollars in private sector investment, created hundreds of thousands of new clean energy jobs, and lowered energy costs for families while delivering cleaner air and water for communities across the country. And that is in the White House's release. That's their press release. Every bit of this is a lie. Every bit of this. If you've been following along long enough, and I've read a bunch of these stories, that a lot of these factories are going bankrupt. Transfers to electric in car manufacturing has resulted in mass layoffs. The private sector is not investing their money. They're investing money that they received from the government as a subsidy to get involved. And as far as lowering energy costs, anyone here experienced lower energy costs anytime recently? Or has everything gone up? Fuel, gas, electric, even phone coverage. Everything's gone up. Everything. Someone want to explain this? That is everything in that paragraph in the White House press release is a lie. Kimberly says impressive gardening skills. That's my wife. My wife is very impressive with all of that. She does. She's got the raised gardens going out back. She makes soap. We were just mixing some up a few days ago, and she's going to do another batch on Sunday. She makes her own natural soap. She does quilting. She does a lot of that kind of stuff. Savage says, congrats on growing carrots. Country says, they'll grow longer if you have more loose soil. Well, we try. It gets to a point. We've got our a few inches of our topsoil, which is the really it's like 6 to 8 inches of compost, but then we got that Georgia clay, which is why we get stumpy, fat carrots. Jane thought that Biden was retiring. Yeah, well, not before he screws up as much as he can. Jericho says, weren't they best of friends the other day in the office? And Kimberly made a donation to the channel. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Kimberly. Very, very much appreciated. We need all the help we can get with our felines, especially. Monkey says, when Joe says cleaner construction materials, he probably wants mainland China's modern building material being tofu dreg. And yeah, drag. Tofu dreg is a reference to really, really shoddy, what's the term? Concrete. it's concrete that after it dries, it doesn't bond very well. So over time, you can pull it apart with your hands. It starts to crumble. Dragon says just spending money needlessly before he physically leaves the White House, once again kicking the American taxpayers in the teeth. And Monkey explained that, what I just said, Tofu Dreg saying for mainland China, building materials being very cheap, you can pick it apart. League says a bunch of clean bullshit. Haha. Kimberly says spending all the money for clean energy while flying all over the world in private jets. That's about right. Sean, when are people going to quit believing in this climate initiative lie? I think most people, there are a lot of people that are seriously bought in, Sean, but most people, I don't think they believe it. But the media and politicians and celebrities will insist upon it. They'll continue to play that number regardless. Because, you know, the more you repeat a lie, the more apt individuals are to start believing it. It takes a strong will to resist over and over and over and over again. Country says your wife sounds like mine. Yeah, and then when she makes the soap, the house smells fantastic for days because of all of the oils. Fluke Man says, does your soap help with dry skin? Would post recipes. I can ask her. She's got a book full of different recipes for the oils and the other things that she uses, and she does it all natural. And then she had canning jars full of dandelions that she picked and dried that she mixed into this last batch. She got dandelion and lemongrass and olive oil and almond oil and stuff that she mixed it together. I help her measure it, and then I pour it out for her, but she does all the rest of it. But there's another $1.4 million down the tubes, and a huge lie. That is a huge lie from the White House press office. The private sector did not invest billions of their own money. They invested money that they were given by the government to invest in those projects. That's very misleading. And no, energy costs have not gone down. And then to add insult to injury, we have not seen a reduction in our utility costs or in our fuel costs. It's gone up. Kimberly says, does my wife use goat's milk? She has before. She has not in a while, though, I don't think. Fluke Man says, our name of the book, I can see if it's available on eBay. I'll ask her, and I'll try to remember to let you know on Monday when I come back on. As we move around here. South Africa. Going to jump all the way across the world to South Africa, and they're going to show you how it's done. They're going to show you how it's done. You may have seen this in the media. And this is, of course, an illegal mining operation that the South African government is clamping down on. And this will be a CNN article. If and when Restream ever pulls it up so that people see that article up. Let's go, Restream. They drive me nuts with that. Anyways, I'll read the title. 100 in disused shaft in South Africa. Is it up yet? There we go. See? It says several hundred people believed to remain in an illegal mine in South Africa after the government cut off vital supplies and refused to help them in a dramatic bid to crack down on the industry. Food and water supplies to those underground have been halted by police seeking to force the illegal miners to come to the surface, raising concerns about their well-being. I have heard it could be as many as 4,000 people mine. So the South African Human Rights Commission, excuse me, is investigating the police for restricting the miners essential supplies such as food, water, and medication, which may have resulted in the loss of lives. It says at least one decomposed body has been recovered from the mine, according to police said. That's literally what it says, and that sounds like AI wrote this article. Illegal miners can travel up to 4 kilometers underground and spend months below ground in old mines, according to a report by South Africa's Mineral Commission. But without supplies, conditions are believed to be deteriorating underground. Reports vary as to how many miners were in the abandoned gold mine in the Northwest Province. Northwest Police spokesperson Sabata Mokobobone told the Associated Press that 3 miners who came to the surface indicated up to 4,000 miners may be underground. There it is. A police deputy national commissioner said in a news conference on Friday the service could neither dispute nor confirm the number. Mosikili put the number of miners who had emerged at 1,187. So 1,187 people have already come up out of that mine and were arrested, by the way, because it's illegal for them to be in there. So die in the mine or go to jail is how this is going. Let me close this. It's interfering with the restream. Die in the mine or go to jail. Helter says they're not trapped. They're refusing to come out and be arrested. Yeah, basically. But without food or water or other supplies, there's only so long they can last. Really, the water will do it. But yeah, they don't want to go to jail, Helter. That's the bottom line of it. So die in the mine, because the way that some of the news agencies made it sound, it's like they were stuck down there. They're stuck down there because there's a gauntlet of police waiting for them. That's what's going on. But that's what they do. That's how things are done in South Africa while people complain in the United States about their rights being infringed upon, which often they are, but a lot of the things that they complain about in the United States by comparison to how you are treated in other countries, it's night and day. It's absolutely night and day. You're better off in jail in the United States than you are anywhere else, which is why they don't want to come out of the mine. Oh, man. What a world. What a world, as they say. I've got another article here that demonstrates a good example of government overreach yet again. Yet again. And this is a local story, I think. This is going to be in Georgia. NBC News article, 10-year-old walks alone a mile away from Georgia home, and it leads to his mother's arrest. A Georgia mother was arrested and accused of allegedly endangering her son because the unsupervised 10-year-old walked less than a mile away from his house. Brittany Patterson, 41, had taken another son to the doctor October 30th, and she became mildly annoyed but not at all worried when the Fannin County Sheriff Department called her to say her 10-year-old boy, Soren, had wandered from the rural home in Mineral Bluff into town. It's not super dangerous or even dangerous at all as a stretch of road, Patterson told NBC News in an interview that aired Wednesday. I wasn't terrified for him or scared for his safety. Deputies drove Soren, now 11, so he just turned 11 then, home, and that was that, or so Patterson had thought. Hours later, the sheriff's department came back to the family's home near the North Carolina border, where Patterson was handcuffed, arrested, booked for suspicion of reckless conduct, and forced to pay a $500 bail. So basically, this 11, because he just now turned 11-year-old, for all intents and purposes, walked less than a mile from his home to town. Obviously, he knew where he was, while she was away at a doctor's appointment. But because of that, the sheriff's office arrested her. Helter says back in the 70s, it was perfectly acceptable for children to wander the streets alone with no adult supervision. They'd usually come back home by supper time. Yeah, and in the 80s and even the 90s. In the 80s and even in the 90s. And I was one of those kids. I'd go outside and I'd be gone all day. I'd be gone all day. And my mother didn't know or care where I was. I mean, that's a different situation. But bottom line, I was fine. I knew where I was. Dragon says the 10-year-old boy was kidnapped by the sheriff. So it goes on to say, anger and frustration, of course, because my children were having to witness that. They asked me to put my hands behind my back and all that, and I realized what was going on. Authorities have now offered to drop the charge. Yeah, because of the bad publicity, I'm sure. If Patterson signs a form that outlines a safety plan guaranteeing that her children would always be under a watchful eye, the mother and her lawyer have said. Patterson refused to sign the form and said she'll contest the charge that carries up to a year in jail. Quote, this is not right. I did nothing wrong and I'm going to fight for that. Good. She should fight for that. She should fight for that. That is insane. That is insane. Oh, sign this. And then when she signs that, she's going to have social workers hounding her for the next, 6 or 7 years. Longer if her other kids are younger. Because it says she has 2 sons. Country says, I used to ride my bike over a mile into my friend's neighborhood by myself all the time. Now, not that I would let my kids do it now. Jericho says, times have changed. The arrest was excessive, but still. Nash says, home by the time of the street lights came on. Lucky says, when he was 10, he bought cigarettes with a note. Hey, I didn't even need the note. I used to go down to the liquor store or to the corner store all the time to buy my mother cigarettes, because she would send me out, go buy me a pack of cigarettes, and I'd go down the street. If I went to the liquor store, because sometimes she sent me there because it was cheaper, that was probably about a mile. And I'd pack of cool menthol 100s, and they'd ask me who it was for, and I'd say I was buying it for my mother. And that was the truth. Jericho says a warning would have been enough. I don't know why they would arrest her if he was okay. Yeah, and he knew where he was. He went to town. He figured, I'll just go to town. No big deal. But they picked him up. They picked him up and then arrested her. Arrested her because he was walking. And in a rural community where probably everybody knows who they are. I mean, really think about that. That's the thing. In a rural community where everyone knows where they are. This is overreach. Pure and simple. And I'm glad she's going to fight. And like I said, probably her attorney, and it's a good thing she can even afford an attorney, because otherwise she'd really be screwed. Again, how much justice can you afford? The attorney probably advised her not to sign that. Not to sign anything. Because one, you're admitting guilt, and two, that just opens the door for social services. Social services. And then, like I said, she'll be dealing with social workers from now till doomsday, until those kids are old enough. Fluke Man says the boy was stopped by a woman, asked if he was okay. He answered yes, but she called 911 anyway. Wow. Jericho says, I don't like my girls walk home from the bus stop from school, but maybe that's because I'm paranoid. Sean says, I wandered miles from home down a ravine behind my house when I was 8. Then I would come back in time for dinner. Yeah. Dragon says, how dare she teach her son to be independent and responsible for himself? Jane says, that's silly. The kid's 10 years old. I could see a 2-year-old in the street arrest the parents. God, yeah, I know it. I know it. But yeah, he's 10, 11, and like I said, just turned 11. You know, we come from different times. And Vulgar, one more here. Vulgar says, tyranny and overreach, the pussification of a society. They want you to be codependent, and they want you to be afraid. They want you to be codependent, and they want you to be afraid. They want Big Brother to be the parent. So what do? We arrest the real parent. Got a Telegraph article for you. You'll get a kick out of this one. You'll get a kick out of this one. Whoopi Goldberg claims that a bakery refused to serve her because of her left-wing views. She went on and on about this. You see her with all these like little cupcakes or whatever shit she's eating there. And she'll probably eat all of them, every bit, and the stem on the cherry too. But anyways, she made this claim, but it's blown up in her face. Whoopi Goldberg has suggested that a bakery in a Republican part of New York why would you even go there? Refused to take her birthday order over her left-wing views. The actress, I don't know if she still counts as an actress, although she could be putting on an act for The View, who has been vocal in her criticism of Trump, claimed on TV show The View that the business may have rebuffed her request for 50 Charlotte Russe desserts because they didn't like my politics. Miss Goldberg did not name the bakery, but Entertainment Weekly alleged that it was Halterman's, a 145-year-old family-owned business on Staten Island, one of the most conservative parts of New York. And there is Halterman's Bakery in the image there. This is where it starts to get interesting. Jane says they must be a new rule. There were 2 parents got arrested a few months ago because children under 12 left in a hotel room for a few days. Yeah, they in several states, I don't know if it's national, but in several states, you cannot leave a child unattended in the house unless they're at least 12. And some states also will not allow a child to sit in the front seat unless they're 12. In the passenger side of the front seat of the car. And Vulgar says that's right. They don't want real men anymore. No, they want cowards. Dragon says she's one of the same people that was happy to see conservatives denied their free speech on social media. Isn't that a denial of service? Country says a little taste. If the left's own medicine, if it's true, thinking about FEMA not helping people with Trump signs in the yards. Here's the thing. It's not true because Halterman's stepped up and said something about this. Okay? They stepped up and said something about it. She did come to them. She did ask for those cakes. They didn't refuse her because of political views. They refused, or they said, we can't make them right now because our boiler is being repaired. We can't handle an order that big at the moment because it's a very old building and it is a boiler running their ovens. They said, we can do it at a different time. We can't do it right now. So they didn't refuse her because of political views. They refused her because of a maintenance problem. As we catch up here, Jane says Whoopi Goldberg has many problems. And Jericho says, don't places have a right to refuse service no matter what? They should, but we all know what happened with that bakery. They refused to make the same-sex cake or decorate it that way. They didn't have a problem making the cake. They just weren't going to put 2 grooms on it, if you catch my drift. And 12 years of lawsuits later, it's finally been thrown out of court completely. But yeah, she's been called out because the bakery recognized themselves Here it is. Its owner, Jill Holterman, refuted Goldberg's allegation and said they couldn't fulfill the order because of boiler issues. Mr. Holtman told Entertainment Tonight, I told her, Whoopi, I can't do it right now. We have issues and things going on with the boiler. The boiler is from the building is from the 1930s. When she called me, I had no idea if we could bake that many. That's all it is. But Whoopi put a spin on it to make it seem like she was discriminated against because of her political views. And I'm glad that the baker knew or caught on to this. Actually, Entertainment Tonight figured out who they were. And they stepped up and said, hey, no, that's a lie. Not that anything will be done about it. She's not going to get fired from The View tomorrow, is she? Vulgar suggests that Oprah fled the country because of Diddy. Hey, no joke. Okay? On that note, who remembers Oprah's spiritual healing guy? I don't remember his name. You remember she had some spirit healer that she used to parade around, that she used to go to? Anyone remember that? Does anybody remember that? The spiritual healer? Let's see if anybody remembers. Fluke Man says that's why Whoopi didn't name the bakery, because of the maintenance. If she had done so, reporters would have gone there and asked for their side of the story. Exactly, Fluke Man. That's why she didn't call them out directly, I'm sure. But anyways, Laura says Deepak Chopra. Is that who it was? I don't think it's John Edwards, Vulgar. I'm not sure. But she had some spiritual healing guru. Was it John Edwards? Isn't he the guy that's currently sitting in prison, convicted for assaulting children? That guy? Is that the one? And since it was brought up earlier about weak men and weak people in society in general, we're going to jump to the UK. And Tuck, okay, he says it wasn't Deepak. It was a cult leader engaging in human trafficking. There you are. And it was minors, and he's sitting in prison now. But yeah, she used to bring him around on a leash. The Telegraph, baby boomers bankrupted Britain, and young people are paying the price. Here we go. The hike in annual student fees to £9,535 in the latest examples of governments feeding off of the young while taxing aspiration. Caught between HM Treasury, the government, and the higher education lobby, today's students have no one to fight their corner on fee levels, interest charged, loan terms, or repayment fees. Few vice chancellors care about the financial damage imposed on students once they have left university. And it goes on and on to talk about university rates and all of this other stuff, and graduates who climb higher at work and become higher rate taxpayers face 51% marginal tax rates for having a degree and 57% rates with a postgraduate qualification, which is insane amounts of tax. But the bottom line is they're blaming boomers for this. Boomers didn't make them go to college. Boomers didn't make them take out a student loan. Okay? Assuming you take out a student loan for university in the UK, right? They're not just giving money. My issue with the article is how each generation wants to blame the previous generations for all their problems. while taking no responsibility for it, while doing nothing to fix it. You complain and complain and complain. Every generation has done this. And the people that are doing it right now are going to be subjected to it in the future because it's divisive. It's done deliberately to create gaps. And yeah, you know what? Previous generations may have made some stupid moves and done some foolish things, or some things that we don't understand, because times change. Circumstances may have been different. Unless you were there and you really understand the history, you don't exactly know what the hell was going on. You don't. You can't appreciate it. Most people don't. They don't understand history, and they don't have the visualization skills to picture what life might have been like. So yeah, blame your elders. But what are you doing besides begging for someone else to solve your problems? So they can go on in this article, and they can sit there and they can say, oh, baby boomers bankrupted Britain. You know what bankrupted Britain? World War II. Britain was really the most powerful, or the United Kingdom, the most powerful organization on the planet. More so even than the United States at the time, really. World War II ruined them. They never fully recovered. They were demolished in World War II. Then they lost their hold on India. I mean, what do you want? They've never recovered. But I suppose that's Boomer's fault too, that they were bombed. Boger says Alex Jones accepts nomination for Secretary of the Press. Did he? That would be interesting. Helter says the whole baby boomer narrative is another hard-push divisional tactic designed to get poor people to blame their woes on other people, like every other divisional tactic. I agree. Dragon says, here's my 2 cents. Every previous generation is to blame. Why? Because they were the next generation's future. But, I mean, there's only so much of it you can pin on everyone else. You know, all of us, to some degree, are victims of circumstance and victims of our environment. But you reach a point where you're the one making the decisions. I could sit here and be a total bastard and blame everything on my bad childhood. Okay? And I had a bad childhood. I had a rough childhood. It's part of who I am, but it doesn't have to define me. There's a point where I've got to say, okay, blinders off. Let's look at the bigger picture. What am I also doing? How can I get away from that? How do I break those generational curses? How do I move forward? How much of this is on me? Instead of sitting there filling up a cup with my little tears and drinking it and going on and on about how everyone else ruined my life. Yeah, I've been kicked around quite a bit. I've been screwed over by my mother. I've been screwed over by my exes. I've been screwed over by the courts. So what am I supposed to do? Curl up in a ball and die? No, you got to push forward. Fluke Man says millennials and Gen Z supports transparency. Children doesn't understand anything, has to live damaged health from surgeries and puberty blockers. Yeah, everybody supports transparency, but nobody wants to do it. Cruising says, in defense of all this, as a child in the 90s, I had boomers definitely brainwashing me that I had to go to college if I ever wanted to amount to anything or live well. Happened to so many of us. They still push that narrative that you've got to go to higher education or else you're not going to amount to anything. And it's not necessarily true. It's not true for everybody. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Volger says Britain still owes us for helping them during World War II. Good luck with that. And Lucky suggests Britain has more money than they let on. Well, what, taxing people up to 57%? I can't imagine they don't. Vulgar says, I hear that. People just trying to screw everyone. I just want to be left alone. And that's exactly. I mean, you don't have to have, and that's why I read a lot of articles about government overreach and other things like that. Knock it off. Knock it off. We don't need Big Brother. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. A lot of that needs to get walked back. You just can't keep crushing society that way. It'll erupt and burn down eventually. And I'll put that up there from Tuck. I don't know how much of that I can read because, again, I don't know what I can and cannot say on ScrewTube. Don't know what I can and cannot say anymore. Got to be careful about them buzzwords because the algorithm will beat you down or kick you in the teeth. As we shift gears here, we're going to jump to California. Someone explain this to me. Washington Examiner article, Pelosi sets the stage for a 2026 re-election run. Crybaby Pelosi is going to run again. She's going to run again, and she'll probably win. It's a Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi has filed for re-election in 2026, setting the stage to once again become a key anti-Trump force. The 84-year-old, I thought she was older than that, 84-year-old filed a statement of candidacy Thursday with the Federal Election Commission after winning a 20th term last week. 20 terms. A spokesperson for Pelosi declined to say whether she's running for re-election, but the paperwork is in of her intentions ahead of the next election. 20 terms, folks. 20 terms. Can someone tell me, has she ever done her job? This is what I wonder about guys like this or people like this. I look at Bernie Sanders. I look at AOC. All I ever see them doing is picking fights with people in other districts. She fights with everybody. When the hell is she in California? When the hell is this woman in California? Can someone tell me? It makes me think, God, what was her name? The other 80-something-year-old woman, she died earlier this year. They brought her after some rehabilitation, brought her back to Congress. She didn't know where she was, and she couldn't see. Do you remember? I read the article. She wasn't sure where she was. Retire that woman. Make her leave. Does she do her job? Lucky says that's not her. It's a replica from Boston Dynamics. I don't think they're that far ahead yet. Tuck says, please like, share, and subscribe on both channels. Thank you, Tuck. Please do if you don't mind. Where are we here? As I catch up, Kimberly says we need term limits. Good luck. They've got to vote it in. They're not going to vote to hobble themselves. Most of them won't do that. Helter says the whole geriocracy thing was not the norm back in the olden days. Politicians had usually stepped down and let younger blood take the reins. Country says 19 term limits too many. I just don't understand how she hangs in there. Dragon says, not surprising. Power is hard to give up once you have it. All People says Dianne Feinstein. Thank you. And Savage said Dianne Feinstein also. Yeah, I couldn't think of her name, but I read the article because they brought her out of the car to bring her back because she had been out for some weeks or whatever because of some illness or whatever the hell happened to her. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know where she was, and she couldn't see. I'm like, God, just stop. And she didn't. Did she ever do anything? I remember reading her synopsis, and I was like, there's nothing here impressive. And you don't have to make history. You don't. Just do your damn job. And when are these people doing their jobs? When is Bernie Sanders doing his job? Well, he's running around mouthing off at everybody all the time. Oh, by the way, he's practically kissing Trump's ass now. Have you seen this? I don't have an article pulled up, but I was reading earlier that Bernie Sanders is talking about how Trump has some good ideas now. There's a couple of things Trump's been talking about that I can get behind. You suck up. Oh, Bernie, you old dirty bastard, you. Oh, my God. Flukeman says, wasn't she in a wheelchair attending government meetings and hearings? Yeah, if she could even hear or see anything. And somebody was in there explaining to her what she was voting on. It was incredible. I got to find that article about Bernie now agreeing with Trump. Like, ooh, wow, the winds are changing, huh, Bernie? You're just blowing the wind, you independent little slob. Anyways, we are at the top of the hour, so I'll go ahead and start signing off. Again, you're listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and there's Granny Smith. She slept there the whole time. Granny Smith, you look like a furry sausage. Never mind, Granny Smith. She's not paying attention to me. You are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk. And you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk at Prepper University. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com right there, podcasting out of Atlanta. Special thanks to Kimberly for making a donation to the channel today, helping out with the kitties. And also somebody else. I'm trying to remember, was it Katie? Katie made a donation to the PayPal for the cats as well. Very much appreciated. Thank you, everyone else who was able to join us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation.